crispy. Hi, this is Sally Morgan and Tristan Corgi, and we're here for an episode of Conversations with a Corgi. We are back in our own home after a really long drive across Connecticut. It took like 3 hours to go 60 miles. And then I had to immediately run and get my yard guy to mow the lawn and take care of things here, because in a week with rain in New England at this time of year, things grow really fast and you can have a jungle in your yard in no time, which in our case is not what we want because we have a tick problem here. And little Tristan is very tired. He had a long ride as well and a lot of stress in the car with doing some stops and picking up Brian, who he loves. He was jumping all over him. So Tristan's really happy to be relaxed here again. And then of course we had thunderstorms all night, which and some really exciting lightning coming up from Vermont. It was amazing. So that had Tristan a little bit worried, so he spent some time in the bathroom on the floor where he likes to hide. So he's not too peppy today. So I am trying to get his little nose in the picture. I'm a physical therapist, a craniosacral therapist, and a Tellington T-Touch practitioner for animals and people. And I'm just back from a week in Rockville, Maryland, with the wonderful Linda Tellington doing a T-Touch class for dogs. And we had a fairly small group, maybe 14 people, and it was just a wonderful experience from start to finish. I had a great place to stay at an Airbnb that had never taken a dog until Tristan came along, and beautiful, fun paintings of animals all over the house. The woman that owns the house does some art dealing and has a couple of painters in the south of France whose stuff she represents, including this great guy. I think his name is Hervé Mari. And I'll figure out a way to show you some of those paintings at some point. They do commissions for a fairly large one. Well, not super large, like 12 by 18-ish. It's like $300 plus 20% more if you send a photo of your dog. And he does these really great layered paint techniques, and all the animals have those googly eyes, you know, with white and a line around it and then a little spot in the middle. So especially the cats, they really look surprised. And the mice, he has their heads coming in from the sides of the frame, so it looks like he just stuck the camera into a mouse house and they all were like, "What? Who's that?" So the surprise look is kind of cute in some of them. And some of them, the dogs really do look a little like, eh. But most of them, they're just really cute. And he does all kinds of dogs. He does really great dachshunds, mostly red ones. He must know somebody that has one. So it was a pleasure staying there. And then, of course, we were at this place called Your Dog's Friend, which is a great dog training facility in Maryland, with this wonderful blue carpet that you saw. It's not really a carpet, it's like foam. And we had a great, great time there. And I will be updating all my Facebook Lives. I only had internet on my phone, which is not a very big phone, so it was pretty hard to see to update things. But at some point later today, although I have a lot of clients, I will be able to get that all squared away. And Tristan had a good time. He met some new friends, and it was just a wonderful experience. And sadly, we aren't going to be doing too many 6-day trainings for T-Touch anymore, because it's really hard for people to get away. It's hard for people to afford it. It's hard for people to travel with a dog, and even for horses. And it's just not what it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago when I was learning T-Touch in the 80s. There was a great horse vacation place in Vermont or New Hampshire that we used to go to, and they had week-long trainings all the time with Linda and Robin, and they had these like ski lodge places where you could stay in these wonderful condos with 1 or 2 other people, and then the whole building was full of T-Touch people, and we just had a wonderful time. There was a great woman who cooked wonderful meals for us, and we all sat at picnic tables in this farm kitchen, and a heated indoor arena, which in New Hampshire in January was kind of important, and a lovely like tack room that was quite big that we could work in. And they run trainings many times a year. So it was really a pleasure to be able to go up there and learn, and I am lucky that I got to learn there prior to it closing eventually, because it wasn't making enough money and there were other problems. I think those cottages that we were in, those condos, did become ski lodges. So anyway, but Linda said that she will be doing some 3-day trainings, and she's really going to focus on the heart of T-Touch, which is, you know, to me, what T-Touch is to me. This connection you have with your animals and the connection to the universe and the all that is. And that is a big part of working with animals for me, and I think for a lot of people. So that will still be happening. But Linda's had an intense travel schedule for a number of years, and she's just going to change that a little bit, as well we all might want to do. And so many people are doing online webinars now. I have a friend who's doing a dog training course online completely. She doesn't have a dog. She hasn't had a dog for a number of years. She doesn't have a neighbor dog that she's working with. It's just amazing, and I've been talking with some of my other friends who do animal body work about how to do an online course when you can't really see how people are touching the animals. It's so important to be able to really have that hands-on experience to teach hands-on work. So I don't know, T-Touch is going to make some changes, and everything's in flux. I mean, with the internet, so many businesses and you know, ways of working are changing so much, and it's just not as easy to fly around and teach classes as it used to be. And I think there's going to turn out to be some combination. One of the women in my group did the Tennessee class at the University of Tennessee that they have for animal physical therapy for vets and PTs and PTAs and vet techs to attend. And she said now it's like 100 hours online, and then you just go there for 1 week for labs and dissection. And as I recall, years ago, 20 years ago, that was like 6 1-week classes you had to fly down there for in the course of a year or two, and it was a lot more difficult logistically. So, you know, that's just one example of the way things are changing. So what I really wanted to talk to you about today is my experience yesterday at the place called Monkey's House in New Jersey. Monkey's House is an animal hospice and sanctuary for dogs, and it is run by this amazing woman, Michelle Allen, who was a nurse, and she has always loved animals. She ran a tack shop, she was a horse rider, and her heart is touched by dogs in a very deep way. And I am hoping to do at least some T-Touch classes there, and after meeting with her yesterday, I think in the fall I actually will offer an animal craniosacral therapy class at her facility. There are so many dogs there, and they so need this work. They're all seniors, they all have issues, and it would be interesting for the students to see so many different kinds of animal ailments, and great for the dogs to get the work. So if you are at all interested in animal craniosacral therapy and taking that class, it's 4 days, usually run Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I am definitely going to be offering one there at some point, and possibly in the fall. And I'm also setting up one here in Northampton sometime in the fall. And I will be doing a webinar with Linda on Wednesday next week about the intersection between craniosacral and T-Touch. So in the meantime, I went to Monkey's House yesterday. It's not too terribly far from my mother and my sister's house, and what an experience. It's like driving up the driveway into like a magic wonderland. There's just such good energy around her house, and a beautiful backyard with a pond and a cute little bridge and chickens running around, and of course as you pull in with a dog in the car, barking, 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 every kind of barking, small barking, big barking. And Michelle greets me at the door, and of course she's got to apologize because she doesn't know how people feel about barking, but barking for me goes in one ear and out the other. I'm trying to hear each dog's voice and what they have to say. I'm not really concerned about the barking, but she said, just come in and sit down and they'll settle. So of course That's what they did. And I walked into a room with Tristan, who's not always super friendly, but he said hi to some people and had a really good time meeting many, many different kinds of dogs and fit right in with the crowd. I even lost him for a minute. A lot of her dogs are tan and orange color. My favorite, apparently, because that's the color of all my corgis. So I knew I had about an hour and a half there, which I think stretched into more like 2 hours. And I could only work on so many dogs at once, which is a bit of a logistic problem when there's so many dogs there. And a dog came up to me immediately when I walked in, and she was a German Shepherd mix. And she had gone outside with some of the other ones when I got there. And Michelle said, "Which dog do you want to work with first?" And I said, she offered me this little fluffy, kind of losing her hair and having lots of issues, little dog. And I said, "Well, really, I think that the German Shepherd was the first to ask, so let's get her." And she said that that was her personal dog, Zora, and that she, was there to help her run this place. So I don't think it's any accident that Zora came up to me right away and said, "Please spend some time with me," because Zora's got a really big job as a dog. She's got to take care of Michelle and Michelle's heart with a place where she's running a hospice and a sanctuary. And what that means is that dogs are passing away pretty regularly, and she has to be really spiritual and be at peace with that. And having her own dog there by her side with so much transition is really helpful. So Zora came in and sat by me, and she has had some trouble with urinary incontinence. She just kind of dribbles, which is probably one reason that she ended up not having a home, and Michelle was able to find her. And she just has a big, generous spirit. She's a great dog, and I worked on her heart chakra. I worked on her thoracic diaphragm and her respiratory diaphragm to bring some energy to her heart, because she has a really big job. And then I did quite a lot of work on her hindquarters, a pelvic diaphragm release, which is cranial work, and went deep up into her pelvis to work with her bladder to try to help her not be struggling with incontinence. And I did a chiropractic adjustment on her, and then I used my tuning forks to bring some vitality back to her bladder so that it could work better. And I said to Michelle, I don't know where she was spayed, but I feel like that was really traumatic for her. Like maybe she had had some puppies, maybe she wanted to have puppies, but I feel like that aspect of her life is part of what's going on with her now. And she's probably, I don't remember, 9 or 8, something like that. And she's just a wonderful, wonderful spirit, and it was really a pleasure to meet her. And I know she's doing a really important job there at Monkey's House, so I really wanted to support her, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to do that. So the next little dog I worked on was the poor little white one that was losing her fur, and one of her eyes and her neck had been injured. There are several dogs there that are blind and deaf, and she was dawdling around, a little tiny thing like Chihuahua size and kind of Bichon-y, and she had walked into a big dog and surprised him, and he had snapped and caught her eye and neck. So she was recovering from that, but she's a pretty recent rescue, like in January, and so she's got a coat problem. Her little tail is completely bald and raw, and Michelle is doing a lot of work to take care of her. My sister has seen her a few times, and she was just laying on her bed, like her whole immune system is just in crisis, trying to recover from the food problems she had had and her life. And she seems like a happy little dog who probably had a pretty comfortable life at some point, but was just thrown out for whatever reason. And Michelle's not even really sure how old she is, like kind of older. So I wasn't sure what I was going to do with the little peanut, but I put my hands on her, and my gosh, that little dog's body was so hot, just waiting and waiting to have someone support her system. So I really only did cranial work on her, and she was so tiny. I could put one hand on the front and one hand on the back of her, and just all of this releasing and releasing and releasing of pain and trauma and dysfunction and lack of mobility. I worked on her probably longer than all the other dogs put together. She just, for such a tiny little dog, she probably only weighed, I don't know, 6 pounds, 7 pounds. She was little and still quite slim, and, you know, had a scar, well, it's a healing scar on her neck from being bitten, and her poor little eye is healing, but she's blind in that eye now from the bite. And I feel for Michelle being there when this happened, because actually, in spite of the fact there's so many dogs, they're a pretty peaceful mix. And the amount of pain and surprise for both dogs when this happened probably was significant. And it takes a lot from a person to be able to manage that and carry on and not be jumpy every time you hear a loud, like, surprise. You know, like a Chihuahua could walk into a door jamb accidentally when they're blind and deaf and squeak really loudly. But if you're a person who's had an incident like this happen, it's hard to be calm and be like, it's okay. So I worked on that little not so fluffy dog for quite a long time, and I think she has a date with my sister next week. And then there was another dog in the room that just really, I felt like I needed to work with. And it's, you know, part of doing the work I do, when you go to a place like this where there are so many dogs, and I could work on any of them for an hour, for weeks on end, you know, once a week seeing them. But you have to really pay attention to your intuition and work on the dogs that call to you. And I think it's not really a surprise that the next dog I worked with was the one who had bitten this little not so fluffy dog. And his name is Bullwinkle, which is funny because my horse I always thought was rather moose-like in a lot of ways, one of which is he would stop on a trail ride from a dead trot to a dead stop to eat moss off of a tree. So this little girl riding him, Catherine, used to say, well, he did a lot of moosing on that ride, but I didn't really have to stop, meaning that he stopped to eat moss on the tree. So I was drawn to this dog who had this name Bullwinkle that I discovered, and he does have, he's a coonhound type dog, or even some kind of mix hound, because his face is a lot bigger and droopier than a coonhound, and he has a few black spots on him, little ones, and then some bigger black spots, which Michelle said, and I could see this, all look like hearts. Most of the spots on this guy's body look like hearts. And he has 2 black ears and a white nose with a stripe up his face, just like corgis. So I guess he's been having 2 problems that are pretty major: vestibular problems and coordination in his hind end due to some kind of lumbar disc type problem. So I worked first on his hind end for a long time, and boy, his spine is so crooked and he has so much muscle wasting behind. He really looks like a dog that would have DM. DM is not very common, if ever, in his breed. So clearly he's had some kind of a disc problem, and Michelle's been doing dog therapy with him, trying to build up his strength in his hind end so that he will be strong enough to start pull therapy. She has sort of a lifetime membership there for a very low fee because she has so many dogs. And so when this big guy, who I keep wanting to call Buford, but his name is Bullwinkle, when he is able to walk a little better, they're going to start pull therapy to build up his hind end, which, if he has any kind of a disc problem, is actually going to be really helpful. And even if he does have DM, which I'm sure he doesn't, the pull therapy would help him. And then, so I worked on his hind end, and his spine was just so off to one side, and kind of a long curve, not really scoliosis, and a lot of the vertebrae were also rotated to the one side. And I think she had said he'd had some chiropractic treatments with my sister. So I was going to do that near the end of the session, and I worked a lot on his hindquarters, so much heat coming out of really his right SI joint and his right hip. And I worked my way up to his front end, and his left shoulder was so sore because the way he lays when he gets up, his left arm is really doing all the work to pull him up. Is that a tick on your cheek? We've only been home a short time. Oh yeah, it is. Let's get that so we don't lose it, Bess. And this is a new one. It's not even attached yet. We have been home not even 12 hours, I think. And Tristan trotted in the yard just a little bit. And he's already bringing in some friends. So this guy, Bullwinkle, his left shoulder really up towards the vertebrae was really sore from pulling himself to get up. because he had to struggle on a slippery floor because, of course, Michelle has to keep everything wood so that she can clean it because she's got a lot of senior girls that are incontinent. So he's obviously been using his left shoulder to get up and down and pulling himself so that he was quite sore there. And it's an interesting and common experience to find a dog sore in the left shoulder and the right hind. Do we have another tick? Oh gosh, I see 3 more just sitting on his leg. Tristan, hold still. This is what happens when you leave your house. The ticks move in. That's just a little tiny one. We'll have to look for other ones later. So anyway, this guy Bullwinkle, it's very common to have this diagonal pattern of the right hind and the left front being sore because usually they're guarding somewhere and they start to use the diagonal pairs to compensate for loss of control in the opposite side of the body. And I see this in horses too. It's occasional that you'll see 2 left sides or 2 right sides, like the right hind and the right front involved. Usually it is diagonal. And that's a lot more functional for them in the long run because if you get compensation patterns where you're using the same side of your body to be your strong side all the time, you'll end up really changing your whole body chemistry. So having this diagonal pair, like he did, is more typical and it's much more functional. So I showed Michelle how to trim the fluff between his pads so that he won't be sliding on the floor, and suggested that she do that with all of them just to keep them having better grip. And she was concerned that he's laying on the floor being a senior. My sister's guessing he's over 12. He looked really young to me. He could have been 8, but you know, his body looked old. And so I suggested those pads that you get to put under carpet to make it non-slip. They come either like white mesh that you can see through, or there's a tan kind that is a mesh that's more tightly woven. And they're just sort of rubbery and soft. You can spray them off with the hose, and they provide a lot of traction for a dog's paws. So, and she's right near a really great place to get things like that inexpensively. So I suggested getting something like that and folding it up so that he can lay on that and have some support. Because when she showed me some of the blankets and things she'd been using, it was pretty clear that it would feel really slippery for him to get up. Like as soon as he'd get a grip, the blanket would slide. And she was concerned that he was hot, and that's why he wasn't laying on the blankets. But it was pretty clear that his problem was fear of getting up if he got settled down on a bed or something. So hopefully with the grippy stuff to lay on or to put under whatever he's laying on, he'll have a little more traction when he's getting up and down. But what a sweet guy. So then we worked on his ears because vestibular syndrome has a correlation with problems in the temporal bones and also in the neck. And his neck was really tight. His C2 was rotated to the left. So I used the activator and did some work on him with that, veterinary orthopedic manipulation down his spine and to straighten his neck, and he just loved it. He was very relaxed and, you know, kept turning to me with this grateful, happy look of relief. And then I worked on his ears, which indeed, as we see in vestibular syndrome, in craniosacral therapy, the ear bones, the temporal bones are supposed to rotate forward and back this way and go out like this together. And also, they have another motion that's more rotational. So with him, his ears were going like this, not together. So we got those temporal bones in sync in that pattern. And then we worked a little bit more on the other bones in his head. And then I taught Michelle how to do the craniosacral ear pull for him for his vestibular syndrome, which she got quite easily, having been a nurse and been working with these old guys for a while. And when we were doing T-touch ear slides on him, we discovered that his left ear was really a lot colder than his right. And being a hound, he had these long, silky ears. And I think that that's a sign of what's going on with him. If there's less circulation in that left ear than the right, we are going to start to see changes in the head and symmetry and the movement of the bones and changes in his cervical spine and his entire system. So I encourage her to do a lot of ear slides and to teach that to her volunteers that come in on the left side in particular, to help get some more circulation to his ears and to make him more symmetrical. And boy, the look of relief on his face as his left ear started to warm from the T-Touch ear slides was pretty remarkable. So I also showed Michelle how to do T-Touch circles around the triple heater meridian at the base of the ear here where it meets the head. Hopefully there's no ticks in there, huh, Biscuit? He says, "They like me." And then I showed her the shock point at the end of the ear to use for situations like when this hound bit this cute little not so fluffy dog, and also to use that shock point on herself to calm down when there's a situation that needs to be addressed, because it's really critical for her, with a lot of these dogs being seniors and having numerous health problems, to be able to stay calm. So her prior training as a nurse is excellent. And it's different with dogs. You know, with a person, when you're running to get the crash cart, your adrenaline is up and you're ready to do whatever you need to do. When you're with a dog that's in trouble, you need to, and maybe this is true for people and we don't know it, you need to stay calm, stay focused, maybe do some heart hugs on yourself and the dog, and be able to really respond in a thinking, clear way and keep yourself calm to help keep the dog calm. So I also showed her with him how to do tarantulas pulling the plow, which, as you recall, oh, I can't flip Tristan over to do this. You just do thumbs are the plow, and the tarantulas are your fingers walking down the dog's spine like the itsy bitsy spider. She has so many dogs that have neurologic issues behind that the tarantulas pulling the plow will be a really beneficial thing for them. And the ear work, if she does this on all of her dogs, along with the tail work, which she remembered from having taken a class with Linda years ago with horses. So with this big guy laying on the floor, we did some tail circles with his tail and then did a little bit of a tail pull, and he did what horses often do, which was great for Michelle. He kind of leaned forward into it and cracked his back in a few places and then relaxed. So by the time I left, the little not so fluffy dog was in a very deep sleep, and this Bullwinkle guy was having a good nap. And during the time I was there, there was a little tiny slim chihuahua, very elderly, tiptoeing back and forth in a little pink harness. And she was walking with her back up like this, and you know, clearly elderly. And she was saying, "I just need a little help with this. I don't necessarily need a whole session." And she's got a little beagle that looks so much like her, and they were curled up together for a while. So I just did some chiropractic, well, I can't really say chiropractic, but veterinary orthopedic manipulation, some joint mobilization on her spine to get a little bit more flexibility in her mid and low back. She may be walking that way for a lot of reasons: kidney problems, old age, poor spine, injuries, pelvic injuries, puppies, who knows. But just to get some mobility in those joints will give her the ability to go ahead and heal and do a better job with her body so that she can walk better. So it was really an honor to work with Michelle's lovely dogs at Monkey's House. And please see the Monkey's House Facebook page, and I'm sure there is a website for Monkey's House as well where you can make donations. She runs this whole place on a shoestring budget, and when I was talking to her about doing a cranial class there, she gave me a tour of the rest of the facility, and she's had 2 more rooms with some really nice big dogs laying on a bed, and some dog beds, and another little room that had some 3 or 4 more dogs, and you know, and so she had some bigger kind of kennel-y things in the garage to keep a dog in that's really struggling. And you know, clearly she has IVs hanging around the house waiting for those who need fluids. It really is a wonderful place for a dog, and she has so many dogs to take care of, and it's so much responsibility. So if you live near, oh, what is this, exit 7, Bordentown, New Jersey, and would like to do some volunteer work or donate money to Monkey's House. She told me the other day she had gotten some calls from people saying, "Hi, is there a Monkey's House in my state? I need to volunteer or drop off a dog or get a dog there." And Michelle just kind of shook her head like, "No, there's only one Monkey's House." And in fact, Monkey's House would be a great thing to have, one in every state or every region. But it is really a labor of love with so much labor. It is hard to feed these dogs all their special diets with their requirements, and she's not just throwing kibble in a bowl like they do at the shelters sometimes. She is got a really careful meal formulated for every dog with their organic meat and their special pills and vitamins and enzymes and probiotics and whatever it is that they need to support them for the best health for their senior years. And my sister does a lot of work for her for a little or no charge, and she really has got something that is wonderful. But so if somebody is interested in doing a lot of fundraising, she said it's really hard to get grants, and I know that my friends who do grant writing for places that used to give $20,000 grants are now giving like $5,000 because the economy is just not supporting a lot of faith in giving a lot of money away. So at least people are still giving money. So anyway, you can donate to Monkey's House online or on their go on their Facebook page and say hi and meet some of the dogs. And it is a wonderful place. And I'm sure Michelle would be happy to work with somebody if they want to try to start something like this where they are. This is in her home. The dogs live in her home. There is not a kennel out back. You don't go to a separate building that's all sprayed with Clorox. Her house does not have a doggy smell. She uses all natural cleaning products, and it really is a home for these dogs. And while I was working on these guys, she picked up probably 6 or 7 of the little guys and gave them a little comb and cleaned them up and, checked on them, checked their teeth to see how everybody was doing for the day. So she is very involved one-on-one with these dogs, and she has just so many of them. I'm not really sure how many are there, maybe, well, more than 25, probably closer to 50. And so if you live in the Bordentown area, which it took me about an hour to get there from exit 2, you go up to exit 7 on the Jersey Turnpike, and then you have to go back about 5 miles to get to where she is. So if you are in New Jersey or New York, or if you're a T-Touch practitioner or a practitioner in training who would love to go work on a lot of dogs, this is a great opportunity. Michelle is happy to have any help that she can get, and I definitely am doing some classes there coming up to help these dogs and help support what she's doing because it is so wonderful. So that was our fun day at Monkey's House. Tristan met a lot of dogs. He had a really good time there. He was the big, manly, young stud there. I hope you don't have more ticks on you. What are we going to do, Tristan? They're hiding in your fur. I'm going to have to do a thorough evaluation of him this morning. And if they're crawling up his legs, that means he just got them when he went out this morning in the side yard, which Brian just mowed. There shouldn't be so many out there. But the environment for ticks this year is just about perfect. Not too hot, pretty darn moist, cloudy days. They love that. And short of hiring some turkeys or peahens to come to my yard, I don't really have a good way to get rid of them. But there are chickens down the road that I might be able to borrow for the day. So that was our experience at the wonderful Monkey's House in New Jersey yesterday, and it was such an honor to meet these many dogs, and really a pleasure to work with Michelle and her dog Zora, who has a really big job to help Michelle run this shelter. And I know she is honored and grateful to have that job with Michelle. So I think today we will close this episode of Conversations with a Corgi with a heart hug, just to send gratitude to Michelle and all of the people that take in senior dogs. There's an old Corgi at a shelter in New York. She's like 14 or 15, and she probably, if not already, is going to someone's home to get some care for her senior years. So I just think it's so important to honor senior dogs. So let's do a heart hug together. Cross your hands over your heart. We're going to make a circle and a quarter, starting with the 6 of the clock towards your feet. You take a deep breath in and go either direction that feels right to you. And exhale as you come around the circle. I don't know what that's doing since I'm on the mic. And make that circle and a quarter and just send love and appreciation to senior dogs and to the wonderful people who take care of them. And appreciation to the dogs that you have next to you or that have been through your life in the past. Because there is really a lot of magic with a senior dog. They teach us so much it is such a pleasure to be in the presence of the wisdom of the senior dogs. So this is Sally Morgan and Tristan Corgi, who's only 7. And we are here for another episode of Conversations with a Corgi. They will all be loaded on YouTube sometime over the weekend, for those of you who only see them on YouTube or have friends that are watching on YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow at about 9:25. Hopefully things will be getting back to normal here, and I will be right on schedule, but we'll see. There's all kinds of things that happen when you go away. It took a little while for the house to get the air conditioning going. It was 87 in here. By the time I went to bed, it was 75. That was a big change, and I was pretty grateful. So we will see you tomorrow morning. Spend some time today thinking about the senior dogs that you have known. Bye-bye. Oh, we have our music this. Enjoy the sunshine today.